like a real teacher, you know, doing a didactic kind of course on being an historian. But feel free to hold your question for the end of the presentation. Let's see if everything goes well with this. Okay. I just can't change the pages. It was working before, now it's not working. Okay, there at the bottom. Let's see if we can go like this. Here we are. Okay. The hows and whys I became an historian. When I was young, well, I'm still young, for certain of you, and when I was a teenager, I wanted to be a lawyer. That's quite incredible. It's not that I had that way of talking or, you know, I wanted to be a lawyer and I wanted to be a hockey player. So both of them suited me well, you know. So going through college and after that coming to university, I started the simple course in history by winter 1982. I was in the University of Sherbrooke University, and I don't know what happened. It kind of got into me. I had so many questions, so many things that I wanted to understand about the society that we're living in at that time. Understand why was there two kind of ways of living, you know, communism and capitalism. Why was there Russian? Why China? So many whys that were not answered, and I just wanted to get into it. You see, and so it got stuck in my mind and a little bit in my heart. But you know, during summer, I did my entries exam for law school at the University of Montreal, and then after that at the University of Sherbrooke, and I was accepted there too. And I went there for only one course, and I understood at that time that my life would never be the one of a lawyer. I understood at that time that I wanted to be an historian. I wanted to do research. I wanted to understand. And so I did my my BA degree at Sherbrooke University, and after that I got into my master degree. And I was quite young. I was 20 years old. You know, I jumped certain degree school. My fourth primary school, I jumped it. Right? I passed from 3 to 5, and you know, everything was easy for me at school. So by the age of 20, I was doing my master degree with on the not even on Argenteuil history, or I was doing it on the Louisiana history. We had a political research program there, and my role was to try to look at how there's people coming, how the political elite changed through the process of the secession war. Was there a place for black people to get into office in Louisiana, and especially New Orleans? And I was doing that master degree and never had the chance to go to New Orleans, so it was kind of an oddity for me. And I said, I should go to New Orleans to understand what is that kind of town, and what is Louisiana. You know, I can't do research, I can't do things if I don't see it. So I decided to quit my master degree at that time and to go traveling for a while. And I went to New Orleans, and then after that I went to Mexico. And I've traveled from north, south, east, and west of Mexico, just looking for the pyramids, the old Aztec pyramids, the Mayans, and I was just looking into history. And when I came back to Montreal a year or two after, I decided not to go back to school. I just wanted to do something else. So this is why I became a singer, a rock and roll singer. And you asked me how do I made those connections between my band, Army band, and what I did at my study. Writing songs was just like telling a story, and I use history in my songs. I wanted to use what I've learned and my BA degree and during my traveling and everything. I wanted to use that in my poetry as a singer. And as a singer, I didn't want to be a backup member of the band. Wanted to be the front man, right in front. And you see that picture there, it's me jumping high in the air. I'm at Bell Center in 2006, you see. With my band, we played there in front of 22,000 people. It's what was quite incredible. And you know what I did? The first thing I did when I got into Bell Center, I went on the penalty box. The Bruins just played the night before, and I went there just the place that Dino Chara sat the night before after he cross-checked Pacioretty, you see? I always wanted to, and for me, that was the big accomplishment as a singer and with my band. We're still playing. It's been 30 years we're playing music together. And I always used history as a common ways of writing songs. I wrote about French Canadian, I wrote about my country, I wrote about Argenteuil history, I wrote about St. Andrews. In St. Andrews, we're always been called the Pichot de Roche, the rock throwers of Argenteuil, and I wanted to understand why it was that. And while telling stories, I realized that in those moments that it was everywhere, you see. And even in my upbringings as a musician, you see, I remember that piece of Supertramp, even the quietest moments, you see, where Churchill is doing the overture in the Fool's Overture. We shall go on till the end while we shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall defend our island. And he was talking about Second World War, see? And looking into songs like that, I understood, wow, this is a good mix I could do. And I remember these lyrics, you see, history recalls how great the fall can be while everybody's sleeping. Boat pull out to sea, borne on the wings of time. It seems the answers were so easy to find. You remember these lyrics? It's so deep inside. And they're talking about the Second World War. They're talking about the invasion. They're talking about the débarquement de Normandie. They're talking about all of that. All these things that my parents, my grandparents told me about, and that I never had any ways of living it, see? And it kind of got into me. And while I was, during all this period of my life, up until 2008, growing up around monuments, growing up around, you see, these are the monoliths in Carillon that we see in the back, the back of the picture. And Dollard des Ormeaux, we see. And the thing with Dollard des Ormeaux is almost every historian in Quebec and in Canada, they have an opinion on the story, on the outcomes of that story. And me, I was growing up with Captain Bonhomme. See, for French Canadian, it's kind of the summum of the storyteller, exaggerating everything. And I kind of figured out, if I wanted to tell that story, I want to have my own story of Dollard des Ormeaux. And I decided to tell it like a raconteur, like a conteur, like Capitaine Bonhomme, like exaggerating everything, which is quite fun. And the mix between history and storytelling, it's so close. Both are telling the truth, but in different ways, which is quite funny. So this is me, I'm always on the balance of science and storytelling. My science, I do it like a scientist. You know, I'm an historian, scientific historian. I do research. I always try to prove everything that I see, and I'm always looking at what the other people are writing on that certain subject and everything. And while growing up as an historian in my BE degree in Sherbrooke at that time, and from 1982 to 86, there was no places for regional history. And me, I wanted to do that, you know. I wanted to be, I wanted at that time to be an expert on St. Andrew's history. And this is what I told my master degree directors. I told them, we have a museum down there at Argenteuil, and I would like to be the expert on Argenteuil history. And he said to me, well, you have to do your classes. You have to do something else, you know, work on another project. Get your renommee, so that after that you can do whatever you want on history. And I said, it's not working with me. I wanted to do it right now. So I decided at that time that I wanted to go study in San Diego. They had a program on public history, public historian. So the public historian is the one who's doing history at the service of his community. It's as simple as that. And they had this marvelous program there at San Diego University that I wanted to attend. But, you know, we were not rich and I didn't have the money. I was missing like $14,000 American at that time, was up to 50,000 Canadian in the 1980s. And so I restrained myself from doing it. And during all that period of time, from the 80s to the 2010s, I always had that back in my mind that I wanted to be a public historian, you know, use history as a service for my community. And in 2008, I was working in construction. I had an accident. I had my hip broken, my knee broken, and I went through a series of operations to be able to walk. And it got in my head, hey, you always wanted to be a public historian. And every time I decided something, I do it. So on that day, on my bed at the hospital, I decided at that time, I'm going back and I am the public historian of Argenteuil. So after the hospital and everything, I went knock on the Museum of Argenteuil, and I met with Lynn Saint-Jacques, the director there, and we talked about history, and she opened me the doors of the museum. So you probably realize that I'm mastering the art of being brief in 14 volumes. I can talk and talk and talk. You know, it's my passion. So I know you can't intervene and tell me, oh, hey, wait, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon or it's 8 o'clock at night. I could be talking and talking. And this is what I like about history. History it's like a well without any bottom. We're always looking into something. There's always new ways of researching. There's always new ways of explaining what happened. You know, it could be an opinion. It could be your view. It could be your view. It could be your interpretation. It could be everybody else's interpretation. We could look at through a certain glasses that are completely different. I could look at with a point of view, a communist point of view, or capitalist point of view, or a North American point of view. History is a marvelous field of research because it's never ending. It's a never ending story. It's just like those stories that the Capitaine Bonhomme used to tell us when we were kids. See? As an historian, I've put those things there. There is the knowledge of the historian. It's what we call historiography. Historiography is the way that we are writing history. People in the 1900s were not writing the same history, the same thing as we are now. It's a science, and that is evolving a lot and a lot. The last years, we had an explosion of new ways of looking into history, which is quite a really good thing. because history tends to accumulate the dust, you see. We're looking at old things, doesn't mean that we have old ways of looking at old things, right? We have the narratives. It's the way that people write or talk about history, which is quite different too, you know. Cyrus Thomas in 1896, he wrote the history of Argenteuil, which is quite a different way that I am writing Argenteuil history in today. So the narratives evolves too during time, and we always have to be aware of that as an historian. And then there are the facts. The facts, they never lies. They are there. It's been written by somebody. And the facts could be multiple. You see, it could be an arrêt gouvernemental. It could be a royal seal. That's a fact. But it could be your story that you wrote in 1825 while you were arriving in those lands here in Argenteuil, and you just wrote little day-to-day story. We arrived at 10 o'clock in the morning. It was a beautiful sunny morning. We were in April and it was hot. Just by saying that, just by writing that, those little facts, there is a lot of interpretation into that, you see. When we're studying the climate history and we look into a writing like that, it was April and it was amazingly hot in those days. And if from 1825 to 1835, every month of April, around the 25th of April, it was amazingly hot. That means that we had a little eating of the planet in those days, you see? So we can go further than that little fact. It's always a question of interpretation. But the facts, they never lie, okay? What is an historian? I write history. See, I could be everywhere. I'd be in university. I could help in movies. I could help in staging exhibit in museum, and I can even be a reference in video games, which is quite interesting. Why do we have to know the past? Hey, we always want to understand from where we come from if we want to know where we're going. this is what got me, eh? And after that, the work of historians. You see, we're reading a lot. Reading it, we have to love read. You know, I read a lot in English, in French. If I could read Greek, I would read Greek books too. See, and after that, we're looking into archaeologies, artifacts, and everything, and then writing on it. Try to understand how people wrote on these topics before me. That's always important. It's to know the historiography, and after that, I could tell you, okay, this is the way it is, and this is how people wrote it before, and everything. So the public historian. Everything that I do now as an historian here in Argenteuil, or when I go in Montreal, or when I work with well, these days I'm working with a class, a master degree classroom from the School of Urbanist at Université de Montréal, and they are evaluating the potential of the Carillon Park to be cité as a cultural and a cultural bien at the Québec Ministère de la Culture. So I help them to understand all the outcomes of the creation of the Carillon Park. And then after that, the monoliths and the story of the Lac des Ormeaux and all this. So we go back into a certain period of time, the 1960s, while they were building the Carillon Dam. Hydro-Québec built that dam from the 59 to 63. And we try to understand everything that was put in place to create that park. And with the urbanist and the aménagist and with the historian, we're all working together to bring a certain protection, cultural protection on the back of Carillon. so that nobody could touch it, you know. Nobody could decide that the Parc of Carillon is a beautiful place to build townhouses or condominiums or things like that. You know, the Parc Carillon has to stay the Parc Carillon. And you know what? What I've learned during that process is that the Parc Carillon was created for the 100th anniversary of the Confederation of Canada. So from the creation of Canada, and that they invested lots of money in those days. That was close to $3 million. Can you imagine today, $3 million? We hardly make the road in Warren Heights, see, on Main Street between one church and the other church. So that was a lot of money in those days. And that the monoliths, the Dollars des Ormeaux monuments, they were created too in that perspective of celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Confederation. It's quite interesting. So as a public historian, my role is to always bring back those, research for the reason why. Always the why and the how, and how we made it. So I do field trip, I do lectures, I do commemoration, and I work on memories. As a new topic in history, the memory lane is so important because all of you people who live in Argenteuil, or live in Marais, or live in the Laurentian, you all know parts of your history, of your family history, of your who were your grandparents? Where did they come from? Your mother, she was probably a politician in Saint Adèle, and she was a conseiller, and she probably left you lots of things, you know, souvenirs and stuff like that. Oh, you remember that store on the corner of Main Street, and you see, we used to go there as kids, and we used to buy. You remember those licorice? You know, we ate those licorice. That was so wonderful. Those memories are really important for the historian today. You know why? Because during a long period of time, it was those stories that were evacuated from the cursus of historian. We were only looking at the major events, at the things that were so important that we forgot to look into what was essential. Everybody's story. So as a public historian, this is something I do now. I go and I collect information. I will be in Harrington during the winter time and talk about with Mr. Downing and talk about the Michel Talks mountain, and we'll go on top of the mountain and try to figure out what was it like to be Michel Talk in the 19th century. See, that's amazing. And as a storyteller, history is so important. It helps us to have the credibility of what we're talking about. And it helps me as a raconteur to always bring you on the side, is he telling the truth? Or is he, again, trying to get us all on this really wonderful journey of fantasy? So and so the raconteur, for me, the way I do it, my playground is always history. I situate it in a certain time. It happened in the beginning of the 19th century. In those days, the family were so big. Many people were living all together. They had 2 children, and then 4, and then 10, and then 15, and then at the 20th kid that arrives in the family, you see the father and mother, they were really discouraged. So it's reality that we are telling and communicating into fantasy. And I figure, I always thought that history is a good history. It always depends on who's telling it. That's that's for sure. And so as a raconteur, I play with that all the time. And you know, sometimes you will think that those story of the raconteur are only for the children. Oh no, no. You as a public, you like hearing those stories too. You see, you just don't remember it. But when you get to hear those stories, you say, oh wow, this is great. It's just like my grandfather used to tell, my great uncle. You know, there was always a musician in the family. There was always a conteur in the family. Eh? Yeah. So um, we continue. That's a picture of the museum. And regional history wasn't my first love. I would say yes, it was. Not more than my wife and my kids, that's for sure. But no, it's a big passion for me, and it's been into me since the beginning of my journey as an historian. To understand the micro part of history, you know, learning about the big picture is always well, it's easy. It's there are people there who are specializing, you know, they have the big picture. As for me, I want to understand how the first people who arrived here in Maranice, where did they establish themselves? When they arrived by the Ottawa River in 1802, which road did they take? They took at that time. Was there a road? There were probably no road. There were probably natives, little pathway through the woods. And they arrived all by themselves, alone, with an axe and probably something to eat for a day or two. And they went up and they walked. They walked up north, up to those lands, you see? And they stayed here and they survived. That was quite, this is what is fascinating me, you see? And this is what I want to understand. The hows and the whys. Why did you come here? Why did you leave Ireland or Scotland or United States to come here? Why did you leave Trois-Rivières and you wanted to come to live in Grenville with a bunch of Irish people? See, as a French Canadian, you see, they were working. Was there that much? What were you working on? Oh, you were working on the canal. Okay, the Grenville Canal. Okay, now I do understand. Okay, there was lots of work to do. See, so to understand these little things, these little details are for me the most important thing. See, so regional history is my first love, and working with the museum in Carillon helped me to get the knowledge of our territory, our land, our landscape of Argenteuil. Because remember, back in those days, Maranites was part of Argenteuil, of the county of Argenteuil. And the county of Argenteuil includes land up to Saint-Adolphe d'Arworth. And so big part of the Laurentian was part of Argenteuil. And working with the museum where I found the amazing amount of archives on our history. It's all there. The people of the 19th century who lived in Lachute, St. Andrews, Grenville, Harrington, Wentworth, Gore, they left everything. Everything they left it to the museum at the beginning of the 1900s. So it's quite amazing. And when I got into those archives, I said, everything is there to construct, to build, you know, to build the story of Argenteuil. And we started with the Ayres family in Lachute by doing a little exhibit on the Lachute in 1885. What was Main Street in 1885? You see, 9 years after the arrival of the train. Because it's the train that made Lachute the most important places in the southern part of Argenteuil. Because before that, it was St. Andrews. See, and St. Andrews kind of lost it. Lost the economic pole to Lachute just because of the train. But there was more than the train. There was the water power of the big chute. What was that big chute? The big chute was the chute that comes to la chute. La chute is just a translation of the big chute. That's about it. The people who arrived there were Americans. They came from Vermont. In 1796, they arrived to a chute above the big chute that they would say in those days. In French, they would write it en haut de la grosse chute. And it became La Chute, which is quite incredible. And this is what we were talking about, that first exhibit. You know how much money we have to build that exhibit? We have only $5,000. We did amazing things with $5,000 to build it. And that was my first exhibit. And after that, we had like 250,000 to build the other one. Wow. That was quite a big project. We worked 2 years on that one, on Argenteuil, ma vie as a river, my life as a river. And we brought technology into it. I told Lynn, I said, what I want that people, the experience that people will get while looking at the exhibit is I want them to see the old landscape transforming throughout time. We will start when it was only ice and snow at the last ice age that we lived here on Argenteuil. So that means 10,000 years ago. And in a 7-minute projection, I want people to understand the old transformation of Argenteuil from the ice age up to today. That was a big challenge. And we really succeeded. You know, that map on the table, that people are looking over the map and they're looking to a projection, and it all transformed. You see the beaver arrives, you see the French people arrive in our land. You see all of that in a 7-minute presentation. That was really a great success. But we had money to go up to our little ambition. So after that, we did the Orica CIL exhibit in 2018, and I wanted to push a little forward with the use of technology. And you see here, we have this wall. This is part of a wall, and it's an interactive projection that clicks with just the heat on of your hand. So there are little sensors in the back, and you bring your hand close to the sensor, and oops, the projection change. And everybody's living a different experience because not everybody is touching the sensor at the same place or looking into the projection at the same. So it could be an experience of 3 to 4 minutes, or it could be an experience up to 15 to 20 minutes in front of that big wall. And the big wall is showing the transformation of the industrial production at the CIL in Brownsburg. You know, at first they were making black powder, okay, for the guns, and after that they were making the cartouche. How do you say cartouche in English? Cartridges. That's it, cartridges. But the 303 for the war guns, and from 1939 to 1945, you know, they were making more than 10 million cartridge a month. So that means 120 million cartridge a year in the Second World War. It's amazingly, up to 4,000 people were working at the CIL and the DIL under the war production in those days. So that means that made Brownsburg really a place with lots of action. You see, and today we have in the village, well, about 1,500 to 2,000 people living there. But in those days, up to 5,000 to 6,000 people were living in Brownsburg. So the community was really prosperous, we would say. And as my line of work, you see, as the historian, I remember the first time that René Legault was one of the directors of the Orica company, and she invited me to go look into the archives at Orica, and it was the one of the most magical encounter of my life with archives that I did that day. We thought, you know, that the archives that they kept were like maybe $10, see, of dossier and stuff like that. They had like over 2,000 boxes of archives. It was like the room here, which is quite dense, you see. 3 rooms like that, full of archives. Everything was there from the 1920s. Everything. The slip pay, all the ledgers were there, all the notes, everything. I even found a little document that was under classified notes, and there were drawings of the German grenades and German cartridge. You see, they looked into, and there were drawings and drawings of that, which was, wow, an incredible treasure. You see, for the historian, that was quite an experience. So this was, and can you imagine starting a project with all that? When I told you that, you know, we are quite kind of the victims of the art of being brief in 14 volumes. I can, you know, with those archives, I could write the history of Orica CIL in 20 volumes. 20 books only on the history, you see. It's quite, well, that was amazing. So this project there for the museum, for me, was an amazing project. Yeah. And through all these process, we always thought about the kids, you know, try to have a pedagogic approach to bring history into classroom, and the classroom of the kids from grade 1 to grade 6. Talk about history, talk about their history. See, sometimes I went to St. Andrew's public school, primary school, and I told them the story of Dollard des Ormeaux, and I told them the first time that Samuel de Champlain rode ride on the Ottawa River, you know, and he almost drowned that day. That was in the month of May in 1613, and he almost drowned at the chute of Carillon. You see, that is something important for us, for our history. Can you imagine if he had drowned that day? That big chute that we always name the Carillon chute would have been named the Champlain chute. You see? And we would have been famous all over the world, and people would have come from France, from Japan, from China to come and take pictures of this place where Samuel de Champlain could have drowned, but no. So this is something we worked a lot, and you see the little guy there, he kind of resembled me without the white and gray hair. So. And this picture here is the famous table with Argenteuil right here, and the projection comes from the ceiling, and you see the whole transformation of the landscape. And this is something I really like doing, is bring people into cemeteries and look at tombstones and understand the ways of the history of those places that we kind of forget, that we kind of, just put aside into a certain oblivion, we would say. Respect those people who came here before us. And it's my way of telling them, thank you for what you did. Thank you for, yeah, having been here, because I'm not sure that I would have survived as you did in those days. And today, the picture of Maud Abbott is really important for me because we're working now in other ways of doing exhibit, not in the building of the museum. We're doing a virtual exhibit for the Musée Virtuel du Canada, so that means Canadian Virtual Museum, and then for the Ministère de la Culture du Québec. We're writing those stories that everybody else around the world could read about Maud Abbott. You know, Maud Abbott, she's a little girl from St. Andrews, born in St. Andrews, raised in St. Andrews, and she was the small cousin of John Joseph Caldwell Abbott, who was a kid from St. Andrews, you know, a little boy from St. Andrews, born in 1821, and he was the third Prime Minister of Canada. And that little guy grew up in St. Andrews. So Maud Abbott, she was a doctor, and she was raised there in St. Andrews by her grandma. And her grandma took care of her, and she brought her up to university, and she always wanted to be a doctor. And she's one of the first female doctor here in Quebec. And she was a great scientist, and she was the founder of the Museum of Argenteuil, one of the founders with Dr. Benjamin Wales of St. Andrews. So we're there writing your stories now, so that you could be, well, as famous as me. My museum, see, this is my museum in 1974, got flooded. 2017 and 2019 got flooded again. And today, I was there this morning talking with people from Parc Canada, and we are working on the moving of all the artifacts. We have to entreposer, store them in other places, because they will do big renovation on the building. And the building will be closed for at least 5 years from now. So this is why I put this picture here, because we're moving all the archives and a little bit of exhibit into the Christ Church of St. Andrews. Christ Church of St. Andrews, a building that was built by Joseph Abbott, John Abbott's father, in 1821, so 1819 to 1821. It's one of the oldest buildings in Argenteuil. And the place is beautiful. You will see next time you come and visit us, it will probably be at Christ Church. Working for the MRC. As a public historian, you see, I told you that I wanted to be part of the community. And working for the MRC was a good way to do it, because I had to step out of my research lab and become a public person. As a documentarist, I did 3 documentaries with one of my friend Maxime Hébert. One was on the Airs factory in Lachute. That was a filature, a woolen factory. And the Ayers family were a big part of the development and transformation of Lachute. They were the builder of the Lachute Golf Club. They built La Lorraine. They built the exhibit ground in Lachute. They always invested their money in Lachute. And Gilbert Ayers was the founder of the Lachute Airport too. You know, he had that in those days DC-9, which was quite a plane, you know, for one person to own, and he had his own plane. So he built this airport, and sometimes, you know, he would go from Lachute to New York, and he would ask Bob Hope, "You want to come and play golf with me in Lachute? I have two golf clubs. I got one in Lachute and one up in Pine Hill, the Carlin Lake Golf Club." And so Bob Hope would come, or Bing Crosby would come from the United States and play golf with Gilbert Ayers. he was quite an important lad, eh? I would say. After that, we did this documentary in 2014 on the train station and the train, the arriving of the train in Lachute. And that was really great. And the way that we wanted to get into is always think of the memories of the people. So we asked those who worked at this train station, what was it like when was the train came and passed through Lachute? And we asked certain person who took the train in those days, you know, just that we could show the kids at school what was it like to be on a train, you know, to go study in Montreal and take the train on Monday morning and then come back on Friday afternoon with all those stories that you heard and everything that you've learned and get all together in the train again. That was a nice place, you see, to socialize and everything. And our kids, they do not know that. You know, my kids, they went on metro station, but they never took the train. And the train was something else. And it was part of the big development of our country. In 2000, that's not right. It's not 2012. It's 2017. We did this Argenteuil, I remember, Argenteuil memories, which we interviewed people from all around Argenteuil about the landscape and their memories of the places and the names of the places. And we looked at the landscape not from a land view, a human view. We looked at it from a bird's view, from the air. You see, with the use of the drones and a good camera, we filmed Argenteuil from the clouds to see what was it like. What was those people thinking of walking up through Scotch Road and go up to McGillivray Lake, you see? It's an impossible path. But that Scotch Road, you see, was starting from the Ottawa River in Grenville, and it went up to Arundel, up to the North River in Arundel, crossing over Lake McDonald from an east to west side to the North River on the other side to the Vallée de la Rouge. And people would walk from Grenville to Arundel. This is quite incredible. And when you look at the landscape from the top, you see all the valleys and all the mountains and all the rivers, and you understand that in those days, those people, they had a knowing, you know, they had a way of knowing everything about, okay, just behind that little hill, there will be a lake. And in that lake, there would be there will be some trout we could eat. And after that lake, there will be a valley. And in that valley, you could settle and you could crop. It's incredible. See, this is something that we lost along the way. This is me. So I kind of, well, you see, Ministère de la Culture in the Laurentian, they had these Grand Prix, and they recognized all my work in 2015 as a public historian and my research and the way that I talk about patrimoine and everything. So I just wanted to show you that. Reflection on the profession of historian. Wow. One of my main goals is to revisit Argenteuil's history. You know why? Because it has been written, but it was way back when. The latest that I can rely on would be in the 60s. Dr. Rigby wrote the history of Lachute in '64. And the memories of Old St. Andrews were written in 1934. And then after that, the history of Argenteuil County by Cyrus Thomas was written in 1896. But you know, in those days, these people, they probably had a certain agenda. I remember, you know, people talk about Cyrus Thomas, the way that he did his research. He would, you know, come to your house and then he would talk with you and he would say, okay, if you want me to talk about you, your family, your little hammock where you live, it will cost you $100. If he didn't pay the $100, you wouldn't be in the book. So, so he was probably deciding on what he was telling or not, what he was writing or not. And today we do not do that anymore as an historian. But that was the way in the end of the 19th century. So my goal is to bring the facts back in those truths. So I was looking for truth and facts while doing a master degree at the University of Montreal in 2012 on Argenteuil history, on the first settlement in the Seigneurie d'Argenteuil. And I've encountered that historians who those who did historical chronics, they were all mixed up in the dates, because they didn't look into the archives. As simple as that. So there was a mixed up about the seigneur. When did they arrive when they bought the seigneury? I say, you see, as Patrick Murray in 1793. 13 of them, they were wrong about the date. They were saying, well, he got the seigneury in 1795. Other would say in 1800. The other would say in 1803. The thing is that he arrived in 1793, and there are proof to demonstrate that it's an act of sale. It's an act de vente. It's as easy as that. So when you go back in time, you see all that. So one of my goal is to bring back truth in that history. And why are you not showing me? Okay. Sorry. Going back here. Okay. By doing that, working for the MRC and the museum, I had the chance to do a historical interpretation of all these little places, So just like at the Monument de l'Art des Ormeaux, we did a sentier of historical interpretation that brings the fact up front of the creation of the monoliths, of the battle between the l'Art des Ormeaux and the Iroquois, and of the creation of the Bac de Carillon. And after that, I did that for the Barrage de Carillon, the Carillon Dam, and after that, I did it for the Grenville Canal, and then after that, I did it for the Harrington Valley. And it's quite interesting, especially for the Harrington Valley, while we were doing this, the survey, the study. I met with the Sonny McCrae, he's an old landowner up there in the valley, and we were talking about progress in the valley, and he just told me, he said with his thick Scots accent, you talk about progress. Progress is nothing for the valley. When I will die, I will be sure you're gonna bury me on top of that mountain, and I will watch over the valley that nobody will ever touch my valley. So the Harrington Valley, it's the same as if you would have been there in the 1950s or quite. It's incredible. So do the historian as an agenda? For sure it has. History isn't only for the conquerors. The history that we had in our when we were kids, it was the one of those who won, not the one of those who lost. It's always like that, It's been used, it will be used again. It's always been used by those who conquered. How about the gender stories? Why do we say his story and not her story? That's an interesting question that, feminist studies asked in the 1970s and 1980s. And it was quite interesting because it gave an all new way, a whole new perspective of looking at things on a feminist point of view. And now we're more talking about her story, as much talking about her story as his story. And lately, it became our story. Why our story? Because it has to be inclusive. And our story integrates everything: time, oral history, Black history. It integrates them too. Those that we forgot, those that we put aside, those that we put in reserve, those that we almost removed everything from them: cultural, language, everything. They were there before we arrived. Without them, we wouldn't have never survived there. They were there. So we have to remember that we are walking on natives' land. And without their help, we would have never survived there. So yes, historian, we do have an agenda, just like I did to prove my point. Did they told us the truth? Those two books, 1491, Charles Simard, he's the journalist, American journalist, who wrote on the Americas before the arriving of Christopher Columbus in 1492. And the portrait that he's painting of America before the arriving of Christopher Columbus is not miles away from what we heard, what we learned in our history courses. I would ask you a question now. How many people were living in America before the arriving of the Spaniard? I'll give you three choices. 10,000, 250,000, or 125 million people. If you say 3 is the right answer, you are right. 125 million people were living in the Americas before the arriving of the European. This is not what they told us. They told us that it was free land with little communities living here and there, not organized. They were probably living naked in the woods. Yeah, surely. Who built those pyramids that I saw while growing up in Mexico? Who built Teotihuacan? Why do the Spaniards build Mexico City over Tenochtitlan? That was an incredible city. Organized, over 1,500,000 lived in Tenochtitlan in 1495. So it was inhabited. It was not inhabited. It was habited. There were people everywhere. The St. Lawrence Valley was occupied more before the arriving of Samuel de Champlain, more before the arriving of Jacques Cartier. What did happen? It was the illness. It was la petite vérole, it was la variole. Only illness that kills 95% of the people living in America, in the Americas, died in 100-year lapse of time. So from 1492 to 1592, 95% of the people living in the Americas died. Illness, epidemics, and war. That's it. That's on what we are living. They never told us that. We heard the other story. L'envers de la médaille, see? So as an historian, you have to look all the time. And these books were written, I would say, in 2010 or something. So it's quite close to us. And today, it's interesting that it is one of the most talked about things in the paper and the news these days about Aboriginal rights and native Quebecers' rights, you see, because, well, it is said that there is a systemic racism toward them. And we should never forget that without them, we wouldn't be here. So we should recognize that. and try to live together, just like French and English people did. Yeah, in St. Andrews, they used to throw rocks at the English people. Not anymore. So it brings me to today, because I don't want to be too extensive. We are working on a big project with the MRC d'Argenteuil on mapping the Long Sault. And the use of technology is so incredible. In my head, I wanted to be able to, just with the tip of my finger, to change from today to yesterday, today to yesterday. And now it is possible with the story maps. If you didn't have the chance to go look on story maps, you should go. Remember that it's called Story Map, and there are many of them that are in display on that website. You could look at London, the history of London, the different evolution of certain quartiers de Londres. You have it for Versailles, you have it for... So we're doing something like that for the Long Sault of the Ottawa River. So the story map it is. And you will see it's amazing. It's really amazing. They have different ways, you know. You could do it with your finger if you have a iPad, or with your mouse. You could just change like this. You just move, and it changed from today to yesterday, today to yesterday. So I wasn't sure if we had the internet here, or otherwise I would have put on the link. And so this is the type of work we're doing with the Ottawa River. We have here Carillon, and we have here Grenville. Yeah, that's it. Carillon here and Grenville here. That's Ile de Carillon, St. Andrews, the North River. See, and all these pictures were taken from a plane or satellite, and they were taken before the construction of the Carillon Dam. So we have the original border of the river here, and in blue, it's all the part that has been flooded with the Carillon Dam, would change the landscape. You see, we'll go furthermore. See here we have Carillon. Before the flooding, that was the first dam built in 1872 to 1880. Built here. It was just a raising up of the river, just like if we did a little wall like this and a steep, and the water was running over the steep. And well, today the dam is 60 feet high. It's a wall that we built on the river. And you see here in red, it's all the land that has been flooded by the construction of the dam. So when you go through here, the Parc de Carillon, you follow the road here, and here you are on the dike. See? So the original river is way further down. It's like, I would say 55 to 60 feet below the water today of that big lake here. And the big lake here is named the Lake Dollard des Ormeaux. So they had, yeah. And here we have Grenville. So you see the land that was flooded in Grenville was not as much, because in Grenville we were on the higher point of the Ottawa River, and in Carillon we were on the lower part. By building this wall, we went like this, raised the water all over. So you see more of the land flooded are on the Ontario side of Hawkesbury here. See? And this was the original river. So all these maps, they will be used in the project of the story maps. And here we have the Rivière Rouge, you know, at the embouchure de Rivière Rouge, the original Rivière Rouge, and then all the land that has been flooded. So today you see there's a camping ground here, and there are beaches, sand beaches here that we go in summertime. You know, it takes some people are doing kite surfing on the river, they're all doing from here. So it's quite interesting to remember that it was not always like that. So this is it. Well, and same as I am doing for the movement of population in the Argenteuil MRC. Back in those days, they were saying that everything started from Le Chute. But from what I encountered as the movement of population is that everything started from Carillon and St. Andrews, because it was the place that people were living at the beginning of the 19th century, from 1773 up to 1840. Everybody was arriving by the water, by the Ottawa River, by boat, and they would go up to St. Andrews or stop at Carillon, and then they would walk to Le Chute, and after that they would walk through Gore, up to Mille and Moronites afterward, and to Louisa and La Claire here, up to Louisa here. But they would start from St. Andrews and not from Le Chute, because there were no road linking Le Chute to everywhere else in those days. The road was from St. Andrews to Le Chute, and St. Andrews was the main point of Argenteuil in those days, from the 1800 to 1860, 1876. The train changed everything. So, and they would arrive in Carillon, and then after that, they would either take the diligence. We say diligence in English. Stagecoach, that's it, stagecoach. The stagecoach, they would take it, or after that, they would take the little train, the Carillon-Grenville train, and go up to Grenville. And then from Grenville, they would walk by Scotch Road up to Harrington here, up to Lost River, and then over Lake McDonald, and then crossing to Red River here, the Valley of the Rouge. And after that, you know, they would walk to Avocat by the other side of the river. They would cross to the Red River here, and they would walk up to Avocat here, and then after that to Rivington. So this is the way they were doing it. Not from Le Chute through Brownsburg to Lost River. This is the new road. It's not the road of the first pioneers. The first pioneers will always arrive by here and there. So you see, how did I manage to find this? Just by looking into the deeds of sales, the deeds, and through the letter patents that those people, the ticket of location that they would have at first, you see, and we're mapping it. So, and now, you know, I just did something really quick and fast with the on a PDF, you see, like that, by using colors, which is not animated, but my main goal is to use that map of 1852 and to do some animation, you see, like, okay, before, from the start of the Seigneurie d'Argenteuil. So the first people who came to St. Andrews, that was in 1795, and they would arrive here at Terrasse Robillard, see? And then after that, they would go up east, the North River, up to St. Andrews. And in blue, you see, it was from 1781 to 1792. And after that, the green part is when Patrick Murray got the seigneurie, and he sold these parts up to Le Chute and over. So it's an amazing way to map. I did that for the Valley de Harrington to understand the movement, well, the arriving of the population in Grenville and Harrington, you see. So Grenville, the southern part, was established quite early under the 1830s because of the construction of the Grenville Canal. And after that, people would move up the Scotch Road here, see, from the 1821 to the 1850s. And after that, in blue, were the other part, on the western part of Grenville. So this is a way to really visualize the establishment of the pioneer family in Argenteuil. And we could do that for the Laurentian and up and over. Because you see, if you imagine this is the map of the Laurentian, you have Saint-Jérôme here, and then you have Le Chute here, and you have Grenville here. There was a colonization from the French that goes up to Saint-Agathe and way over to Mont-Laurier on that side. But all these other parts, they were established by English people, Scots, Irish, Protestant, and Catholic. And I remember reading in a certain book that they said that Monseigneur Labelle, he was in a race against the English people, you know, to go up north. There were no race at all. You know why? Because all these lands were established by the English people before even Monseigneur Labelle thought of doing that race for the north. There was no race at all. You know, you see, those lands in Arundel and all these places that were colonized by the pioneer family of English speaking, they were the best land available in those days. They choose those land because it was in the valleys and everything. You know, they kind of recognized what was on their other country, in their other countries, in Ireland or in Scotland or in England, and it looks a lot like home. And we're going to build our home, and these places will become our home. So home is an important word in history. This is the type of archives that we are working with while we're looking at looking into deeds of sales. You see, this map was to show the road, how they will build the road from St. Andrews up to Le Chute. Because before, they would go through Coteau des Êtres and then Coteau des Êtres and up from Bethany. And you see here, it's La Chute Mills, La Chute des Moulins. This is where the mills were built in Le Chute. And you have here the lotissement and then the owner of these places. That was 1870. First road from the Chute from St. Andrews to Le Chute and the village of St. Andrews. This map was in the Thomas Barron's paper. There's a lot of information in here. See the emplacement of the first bridge, because this map is 1816. That's it. So 1816, and you have the emplacement of the first bridge, and that first bridge was probably a couple of trees all tied up together. You see, that was crossing the river, and people would walk on it to cross the river. And normally during winter time or springtime, it would go away with the ice. Type of sources and everything. So you see, we have to be able to decode, try to find, to decode all the types of writing while we're doing it. And with technology, it's easier today to understand what they were writing, because not everybody was writing as beautiful as this one. This one is easy to read. So there we are. So this is me, the guardian of history, the keeper of history. Hope you enjoy it. I hope you've learned things. If you have any questions, I'll be available for that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Robert. So if anybody has questions that are online, please just unmute yourself or write in the chat. If anybody here has any questions, please.
There is a way you could probably raise your hand if you have a question. Oh, yes. Yeah, they're Kathleen. Is that right?
I've done a lot of research about my ancestors who came to Argenteuil in 1825. But there were a couple who lived on native land near Bonaventure. Where is that located in Quebec?
Bonaventure.
Yes.
Would that be in Gaspésie?
Oh, okay.
That will probably be in Gaspésie. There's one thing that's interesting that you open up the topic of genealogy, which in the way that I do research, I'll always go into genealogy. You know why? Because it seems that you are filling all the little blanks that the genealogists are always looking for those little blanks, and they kind of seem I would use the word obnubulated by those little blanks that they have. Uh, it's that missing part of the history is so important to our family history, which is quite amazing. The amount of time that you put into those research, that helps us a lot to understand the moving of people on the land, which is quite, I would say, many thanks to all you who do genealogy like you do. It's quite incredible. And I know that we do not have all the answers for everything. Like I say, history is a never-ending story. So
Yes, well, a lot of us have artifacts and diaries. My great-grandfather, Dawson Beatty, he moved from Mille-Île to Ontario in about 1855. But he kept diaries. So sometimes when people visited from the other side of the river, he would record it. And it's quite interesting to read. And actually, he was he was a farmer, and he was very industrious, hardworking. So when one of my brothers was born, my mother named him Dawson because, Dawson Beatty was such a hard worker. So my brother's middle name is Dawson. But I never knew, like, the history of our family had been lost before I got into genealogy. And I didn't even know where Argenteuil was 2 years ago, or Mille-Île. And I've done all this research, and I find, well, there's Dawson Lake and there's Beatty Road and this whole wealth of history that, though our family left the area 160 years ago, or no, yeah, maybe 160 years ago, I'm still related to so many people in the area through DNA, and all these place names. Like we had no idea that there were, well, actually the Beattys and Dawsons seem to be intermarrying in Ireland, in Canada, in New Zealand, in Australia. They came from Ireland, different branches of Beattys and Dawsons, but it's a real wealth of history that I didn't know existed 2 years ago. And now I feel a real connection to the community, though I've never been there.
Yeah.
But
so what you're doing is the same thing as we do. You're on a quest. You're on enquête. That's the thing. You're trying to bring all these little pieces of the puzzle all together, and you see that they are all interlinked. Just like we can never get an event or a fact out of the old perspective. So it's the same thing with genealogy. See, the movements, probably your ancestors were influenced by what was happening during their time. And if you understand why they were moving, you would understand why they would have gone to these places. So
and what I find quite incredible is, though they only stayed in Argenteuil for from 1825 to 1855, then 1860, my direct ancestors, through ancestry DNA testing, I'm related to dozens of people whose ancestors are from there. And it's quite fascinating to find that. and to feel that community.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
I
great.
just wanted to say thank you very much, Roger. I found it very, very interesting. And I am actually sitting right now in Ireland
Oh, yeah.
on Zoom watching you, where many of the people who settled the area came from. And I'm remembering many years ago in the early 1970s, we lived in Lakefield. And there was a fellow who lived down the road, an old man by the name of Percy Rogers, who lived way about 9 kilometers down the road into the Gore. And he was an old bachelor, and he told us this fantastic story, which I'm just thinking of now as you talk, about when he was a young boy and his parents had farmed this big farmland, which I drove through about a month ago, and it's all being turned into a development now. All the trees
Okay.
are going down and roads are going in. Very sad. But his old farm, he said that when he was a boy at about 1900, they would once a year take the maple syrup and walk into the chute carrying the maple syrup on their back.
Wow.
And it would take all day. It was 30 miles, 31 miles, or 31 kilometers, I'm not sure what, from Lakeville. And then they would come back they would trade the maple syrup for flour. And that's what his mother would use for the winter to keep the family going with these were the hardships those people faced.
Yeah.
And it's the stories, like you say, it's the storytellers, the story, and like Kathleen's grandfather there with the diaries. These are magical, wonderful resources, and we can't lose them. And
Absolutely, absolutely.
what you're doing to bring them together and to get these stories and make sure we have them for our children and their children. It's great.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else has a question or wanted to comment?
Can we go into that Museum d'Argenteuil there in St. Andrews? Is it open to the public? Can we go in and look at those materials?
Christchurch will be open to the public next summer. So you will be able to come and visit us. As for the museum, it will be closed for the next 5 years. So,
but the church will be open.
Yeah, but at Christchurch is going to be open next summer. So probably have the chance to meet you there.
Well, maybe Kathleen, you can get some of your grandfather's diaries in there. That would be fascinating. Or copies
Yeah,
of
for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
What are you doing in Ireland, Jane?
Oh, I live here part of the year. So I'm just sitting in my little house in Belfast saying hi.
Oh, wonderful. There's lots of beaties still around Belfast.
Oh yes, there's a lot. I see all sorts of people from Warren Heights and the Gore up around, or the names anyways. Yeah.
Yes.
In fact, there's a town here called Mill-Ill, and I'm sure because there's no islands in Mill-Ill, so I'm sure the reason it's called Mill-Ill was because it was some fella from here that, as Roger said, made it his home, called it Mill-Ill.
I have read that, in fact.
Funny.
So do we have another people who wants to share something or ask questions?
May I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Joan.
How long was that museum open in whatever it is there in Cushing, the Carillon Museum?
Yeah, it's been open. Thanks. It's been open since 1938.
Okay,
So,
it wasn't the bar.
The 80th anniversary 2 years ago.
Thank you.
Okay. And it's a beautiful place. We are lucky here in Argenteuil to have such a museum. It's the second oldest private museum in Quebec after Château Ramsay, and it has a beautiful collection of dresses from the late 1900s and early 20th century, and everything that is in the collection came from Argenteuil's families so they left everything, you know, like archives and furnitures, and so we are really lucky to have that here.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? Thank you so much, everyone, for assisting today online and in person. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Baba, so much. That was so interesting. Even my daughter is here today. She has a pet day. She's 9 and she says, oh, that was so cool. So it's really for everyone. So thank you so much. And if you have any questions or anything, you can always send it via email.
Yeah.
So have a nice rest of the day and have a nice weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.